Okay, so I just got back from seeing The Amazing Spider-Man, but as you can probably guess from the title, we're not going to be talking about that movie. What we're going to be talking about is Theatrhythm Final Fantasy. So, if you don't know by now, Theatrhythm Final Fantasy, it's a game where you basically play the music from all the Final Fantasy games, right? Well, the mainstream ones. Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Right? Oh wait, that's right, there was a 14th. So, Square has decided to exclude Final Fantasy XIV. And instead, they have decided to just throw in tracks from Final Fantasy 1 through 13, excluding X2, which is a sequel to one of them, so I guess they consider that a spin-off. And they have said that they will not be adding any music from the spin-offs. Although, unfortunately, that's not the case. Take a look at this. Alright, so before I get on with this, I would just like to establish the whole Summer Square Enix idea that even though that I created it, I really don't care that much for Square Enix. They're a good company for the most part. They can make decent products. Some people will say once they merge with Enix, they've gone downhill. They've made some good games, like The World Ends With You. That's a fantastic game. But, okay, that one was made by Jupiter, but still, the fact of the matter remains that they have produced, or at least published, some good titles. But one title that they haven't published is Final Fantasy Versus 13. But they decide to take a song from that game and put it in Theatrhythm. Not just put it in, but put it in as DLC, which you have to pay for, and so far has only been released in Japan, so America, you got your own DLC right now. You got 8 songs, which I'm sure were ripped off of the game, and they're just going to charge you $1 for each, and I'm sure everybody will buy at least one of them. I'm not going to be buying any, but that's besides the point. So they have a game where you play music, and yet you take music from a game that's not even made, yet you exclude a game in the series which many fans loathe, hate, despise. Final Fantasy XIV is often considered now to be the worst of the Final Fantasies. Some people said the original Final Fantasy II, the Japanese Final Fantasy II, if you will, but so much hate has come from this title, and it's been a disaster for Square Enix. They've improved it a little with some of the updates, but I've never played it. I'm just going by what I've read before I did this video. And what I read, and I'm just going to quote this because this is something that I also read from Final Fantasy Theatrhythm, an interview with the producer of the game, Ishihiro Hazama, who has worked on Kingdom Hearts 2, the Dissidia games, Birth by Sleep, and in the interview, he said that he feels that the music from Final Fantasy XIV, the music which Nobuo Uematsu composed, his first track ever since Final Fantasy XI for Final Fantasy games, he says that he feels it is not ready for Theatrhythm Final Fantasy, and that in the future he may release the songs, but not in the beginning, even though that it was released the same year as Final Fantasy XIII. But in that same interview, and the interview was with Siliconera, so you can check that out for yourself, he discusses why Final Fantasy Versus 13 in Japan at least has a Japanese release for the song. And he goes on to say that he wanted to create something playful. He asked Tetsuya Nomura if he would be allowed to, and he said, let's do this. So, you want to create something playful for the fans, and in the interview, you do mention that it is something for the fans. Yet, you decide to, first off, charge them $1 each, 99 cents, but a penny, big deal, when you're ever going to use that penny on the internet for your 3DS. So, you decide to charge them for that, yet you still say that this game is for the fans. And before somebody brings up the spin-offs thing, he also mentions in this interview that he's focusing in on the Final Fantasy games, the major games. And yet he still excludes Final Fantasy XIV. So, say what you will, some of the spin-offs have been great, and they've had great tracks. Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story, they've had classic tunes in them. I've listened to them. They're great. And if you listen to Final Fantasy XIV, say what you will about the game, but the music, it is classic Uematsu. It's his style. It is perfect for him. It may not be as good as, say, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy IX. Those are the ones I'd say are the best as far as the soundtracks would go. But he decides that instead of including any of those games, including 14, which to him he says is not ready, maybe it's because of the PS3 release coming, but it's been released for the PC for how long? And yet you don't even acknowledge it. You basically say, we're not putting that in, that garbage is not coming into our title. Even though that title was a huge slap in the face to fans. You slap them in the face again by releasing Somnus, which is the song's name, from Final Fantasy Versus 13. And you don't think that's a slap in the face. That this game that many consider vaporware is being released for download, not for free, but to be paid. Do you not think that that is a bigger slap in the face? Not only are you insulting the fans for Final Fantasy Versus 14, or Versus 13, if you will, sorry, but Final Fantasy 14 fans are getting a slap in the face because that means they consider that game garbage, and they should be ashamed of the game. It's not very good. It's terrible. But the fact of the matter is, you are insulting people who wanted Versus 13. You're basically teasing them like, oh, we're going to release the game. We're going to release the game someday. But you decide that that game, which has not been released, by the way, no release date, there has been basically no news for how long? A few months? No? I think there's been, no trailers ever since TGS 2011? But Final Fantasy XIV, which has been released for, I believe, a few years, is not right enough for you to release any songs. And in the interview, he actually has himself saying that we may include it for Final Fantasy XIV will be included as DLC in the future. Maybe. Not even it will be. I'm sure that it will. But he says maybe. So, in addition to insulting the fans who have wanted that game, Final Fantasy Versus 13, and the fans who are waiting on the PS3 for a decent version of Final Fantasy XIV to come out, they basically say, screw you guys, we don't care about those games. Yes, I know that the game Theatrhythm is its own game. Say what you will about it. I don't care. I will be saying my own opinion about that game. But the fact of the matter is, they are basically saying to those fans of both those titles, one of which has not been released, that, yeah, they're going to tease you about this. They're going to say, screw you, you want the song? Pay for it. And yet they have the nerve to say it's for the fans. Now, I myself am, I should have established it at the beginning, I'm not a huge fan of the Final Fantasy games. I've played a few of the titles, more of the old school ones. I've played Final Fantasy III, 4, 6. I've very briefly touched on 9, but aside from that, I haven't played too much of it. And even so, while I like those games for the most part, I do have to say that even though their soundtracks are great, they should not be charging them for this. This is ridiculous. And before anybody says, oh, they decided that, first off, there's no space on here, so, yeah, and second off, who are you to judge them? It's their decision. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna say this. If it was for the fans, why would they charge them for it? Simple as that. They're trying to test their fans, like Capcom did, with so many of their DLC practices. And Final Fantasy, they've done this before. Final Fantasy XIII 2, they made the game. They also made DLC for the real ending, bonus endings, whatever. They've done this before. But I don't know if I should be bringing this up, but compared to Capcom, at least Capcom had the balls, or ovaries if you will, to put the data for the game, for all those extra little characters, extra anything, and keep it on the disc so that at least people would know, hey, this is being a huge ripoff. They are ripping us off. Instead of, oh, it's not on there, so yeah, it's totally different than that. It's worse, in my opinion, that they are actually trying to say, not only is this for the fans, but we are charging those fans who have supported us for 25 years, because it is the 25th anniversary for Theatrhythm, Final Fantasy. That's what it is, the 25th anniversary title.
So, Square Enix must be pretty proud of them making this game. After all, it's just the 25th anniversary.
Do you think I like ranting? I don't. I mean, I did that Fire Emblem video before, which I'm sure many of you will probably say in the comments, oh, you did rant. Well, here's the thing, with the Fire Emblem video, I was not so much saying that I was upset. I was saying more or less, I'm disappointed that Nintendo is taking one of their franchises, which, it may not be the biggest moneymaker, but it's not the customer's fault. It is Nintendo for their poor marketing of the series. Remember all the commercials about Shadow Dragon? I don't, because there were none in America. There was, I think, one in Japan, but I don't think they'd be re-airing a Japanese commercial. So, call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure that's not a smart move. Either way, the fact of the matter remains is that they are basically saying to the people who bought Final Fantasy XIV that, yeah, you guys are suckers for buying that. Ha ha. That game was a mistake, but you guys bought it. Thank you. Thanks for your $60 and $15 per month, or whatever it is. And we're going to release it again on the PS3 and make even more money. Yet, Final Fantasy Versus 13, which they apparently are so proud of, they are actually able to just say, oh, you know that game that we have, and it's considered by many to be vaporware? Oh, yeah, this is about the closest you'll ever get. Enjoy. That, to me, I can't even summarize it. You know what? I'll get somebody who knows how to talk about this. I'll get a friend named James, if you will. I'm pretty sure many of you would know James. James, what is this?
That's not just bullshit. That's fucking bullshit!
Alright, so, rant's over. I'm sorry if you got tired of me complaining. I'm sorry if I bothered you with this, or if you thought that I'm just ranting about this, which I am. But I just want to get my opinion out there, and I want to say, Square Enix, this is not acceptable. Squaresoft, this is not acceptable. Enix, not acceptable. The people who are developing Theatrhythm Final Fantasy, who, I don't know if they're in charge of releasing the DLC, or if it's Square Enix who is giving them the go, but whoever is in charge of the DLC and saying, yeah, go. Versus 13, good. Oh, but don't put in any songs in the main part of the game at all for Final Fantasy XIV, because we're embarrassed about it. We're ashamed. That's what it says. That you are embarrassed about that title, and that everybody who bought that title is a sucker for buying it. That is incredibly disrespectful for those fans who the game is being made for. So, happy 25th Final Fantasy. Here's to the next 25. Hopefully this changes in the future. Until next time, game on, my friends.